We're live.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us here at the Sunshine Cathedral for Christians and Cocktails. We are live, so anything can possibly happen. That is my disclaimer as we begin this evening because we're having some bad weather here. So if it thunders or lightning, you will hear me scream like Tara hitting a high. Just saying. But anyway, welcome everyone to Christians and Cocktails. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be with us. We are glad for our panel lineup this evening. And as we begin, we're going to begin with a toast to everyone and to the day. So if you got them, whatever you drink, cheers to everyone. Cheers. Thank you for being with us. And thank you for taking time to be with us. A couple of reminders before we actually launch into our discussion for this evening. Monday through Saturday, of course, we have midday prayer at noon. Of course, Mondays, if you're with us, you know that it's Christians and Cocktails at 6 p.m. And then on this coming Wednesday is our next Share in the Chair. And this week, we are fortunate to have with us the Reverend Elder Dr. Mona West. If you know her or be familiar with her, she's preached at the Sunshine Cathedral several times. We're looking forward to having her with us in the Share in the Chair. All of our programming activities are listed on the Sunshine Cathedral website at sunshinecathedral.org. You can visit and see all the programming and opportunities that we have going listed there. And if you enjoy what we're doing, we also invite you to do a donate. There are donation options on the Sunshine Cathedral website as well. So with that said, thank you for joining us. And I'm going to turn over to our senior minister, the Reverend Dr. Darrell Watkins, to kick us off for this evening. Let's go for it, gang.
All right. For those who are joining us for the first time, let me just introduce everyone around. I'll go in the order that I'm looking at. I know that's not the same order that everyone else sees. In my upper left-hand corner, there is Tara and Sam. They are artists at the Sunshine Cathedral. Below them, there is Denito, Dennis, and Tito. They are volunteers at the church. And then under me and right across from them, there's the Reverend Margarita Rodriguez. She is our spiritual director. And then below her is our executive minister and my husband, the Reverend Dr. Robert Griffin. So, and I'm, of course, Darrell, the senior minister. So that's who everyone is. It's all home folks, all regulars this time. So that means that we're less likely to be well behaved because we've got no one to keep us trying to behave well. So let's start. Let's start with Tara. Why don't you give us a question?
Okie doke. Which one was I going to ask? Okay, I have one for you. Why does the Christian church have heaven and hell?
Well, who laughed? Well, they have kept it for control. It really is that simple. Rewards for people who say what we say, do what we do, follow the rules, and punishments for those who don't. It makes, I don't think it makes God look very good. But how did they start? Well, I think they probably started as symbols, that they were never meant to be taken literally. And then as we did literalize them, and then we got just sort of meaner and crazier about them. But all of them were initially meant to be symbols. So when we feel separated from God, that's hell. Hell is separation from God. But if God is omnipresent, separation from God is not possible. So it's always an illusion. It's our feeling. We feel disconnected. We have believed a lie, or we're suffering, or we haven't looked up and seen the whole picture, and so we feel disconnected, and that's hell. But that's correctable by remembering the truth, by looking up and seeing more than we'd seen before. So heaven represents being in the presence of God. That's always. Hell represents being apart from God. That's never. Except we experience heaven when we remember that we are one with God, and we have a hellish experience when we forget that we're one with God. Now, we have all kinds of symbols and mythologies and stories to describe those feelings, and there are others. I mean, reincarnation. Is it a thing, or isn't it? Well, some people believe yes, some people believe no. It is, though, primarily a symbol that we're new all the time. We're always waking up to a new experience. We're learning, we're growing. We're not the exact same person we were before, and yet we are the same. We're this one life having all of these experiences. Well, that's what reincarnation represents. I think it's A Course in Miracles that says, should you teach reincarnation? And the answer is, since the world as we experience is sort of an illusion, it's all experience and symbol anyway, it doesn't matter if we have one illusion or 1,000 illusions. So reincarnation it ultimately can't be true because it suggests there's more than one life, and there's just one. There's one mind, one life, one power, one love. But if the symbol helps you understand that life is forever, then it's useful. Go ahead and use it. That's what all of this is. Purgatory is a purge, a purgative, where you're being purged of your fallacies and your mistakes and your errors, so that you can experience the truth of heaven. Is there a place that's really a purgatory? I rather doubt it. But all of these things are symbols. The symbols, stories develop about them. Then we literalize the stories and use them to control people. And that's where we've gone very, very wrong. So why do we come up with it? Well, probably innocently enough as symbols to help describe our experiences. Why do we keep it and use it the way we do? Because we can be mean. And really, if you tell people that your idea or your sexuality or your belief or for any reason at all, that God will abandon you and maybe even abandon you to torment forever, there's no love in that. There's no kindness in that. And so the more we cling to that, that says much more about our own pathology than it does about any cosmic truth.
Thank you.
Dennis, below her, what, you got something?
Well, I kind of identify with this question, so I didn't ask it, but I'm gonna. Your sermons, I'm full of love. Goes away probably 5-10 minutes. It depends on how the traffic is on the way out. But it says, and by Sunday evening, I'm struggle with loving certain people. How can I hold on to this love all week?
Okay.
Well, since there's no traffic right now from church,
Just on the way home today.
Editorializing. That question came in 2 or 3 weeks ago from a congregant I know who sent it, and so I'm sorry that he's had to wait a couple of weeks, but here we are. We're getting to it. I always promise we will eventually get to it. And so the question is that in church he sort of feels love, but he's not able to hold on to that all week long, or maybe even all day long. And so that's the experience. But in the end, what is the question? I feel love in church, and then I sort of lose it.
Right. How can I hold on to the love all week? How
do I keep it? How to hold on to it? I don't know. Just practice, I guess. Sometimes I can go a day or two. Sometimes an hour or two. You fall off the bike and you get back on. I do know people who just exude sweetness and joy and kindness and forgiveness all the time, every time you see them. And I always think that they're faking it or that they're heavily medicated. Well, I'm not mad at it, but I'm looking for that medicine. But the fact is that we are complex people and we have a lot of emotions, and we're not going to be just one note all the time. We're not just always going to be happy and loving and kind. Now, when we aren't what we want to be, we can acknowledge that, notice it, and step back into our truth. But it's a process. There's no just holding on to it. So I think when we go to church and we feel that because we're together. We're all our best selves in that moment, and we're sharing our best selves with each other. We're charging each other up. We're hearing good words from the music and from the scriptures, and we're loving each other. And so in that gestalt of love, we're charging up. And so one of the things we can do is just keep recharging, and maybe the charge lasts longer over time. One of the good things that have come out of our sort of isolation these last 2 months is that the church has been super present because of the internet. We've been present every day to people. And one of the comments I do keep getting is how much people appreciate being to connect daily with their church, have some sort of worship or study or prayer experience every day. Now, of course, you can do that alone, but the power when it's shared seems to be increased. And so, just keep plugging in. If plugging in makes you feel better and more loving and closer to God, just keep plugging in. I can't tell you how it's going to last all the time because I haven't had that experience. So I can't give what I don't have. I can't lead where I haven't been. But I can tell you that those feelings that you have, that love and that joy, that's real. And so celebrate when you do have it. And maybe that's the answer. We know that where energy where energy goes, where attention goes, energy flows. And so if we will spend time being grateful for that experience, that tends to prolong the experience or attract more of the same or lead us to more of the same. So, if you have a really good Sunday and then Monday is off track again, maybe we remember Sunday and give thanks that we had such a great Sunday. Maybe that makes Monday better. But yeah, I guess just keep trying. And when first one of us that gets to that place where we're just in that wonderful place all the time, we'll tell the rest of you about it. That's not me yet, though. We do have a spiritual director among us who can give some insight.
And I thought you were talking about her when you said she's happy all the time.
I thought you were talking about me.
Everyone's wonderful on this panel. Everyone's on the panel. But I've seen moments where, just once or twice. Yeah. It's true. I mean, and even that isn't necessarily terrible. It's, we have a lot of feelings, and the thing is to not get too attached to or stuck in any of them, including the feeling of I'm euphorically happy all the time. Are you really that? I just doubt the legitimacy of that. I think we want to feel our feelings. We want to express them in healthy ways, and we want to stay balanced. And euphoria all the time, that's not balance. Mm-mm. Margarita?
Well, I think, like you said, that's one thing. You can't be happy all the time, like euphoric, because that's not balance. But I think also, like if you're feeling down, that day that you're feeling down, the energy is going away. It's like you say, go back to what made you feel that joy. So maybe let's watch that sermon again and re-energize, or maybe read a book that will uplift you, or if you like music, just go and sing and dance by yourself and make yourself go, lift up your spirits. So it's about also we take responsibility for it and really don't go into that hole of not feeling, joy or happiness or love. If we just join that feeling of not being that for a long time, then that's going to get us in the rut for a longer time. But if we can just stay, we need to acknowledge that we're not feeling well when we're not feeling well, and let it be. And if we need to cry and we need to scream, that's okay. But it needs to also go away once we release it. And then we can go into finding something that gives us back that energy.
I sometimes find it's very easy to love people and very difficult to love persons. And so if that's the issue, if the issue is, I love my church and I love my city and I love the world and I love people, but there is this one somebody that's really given me a fit and a rash, then that's where forgiveness work comes in. Like I may never want to spend time with this person. I may never understand this person. I may never want to rub and give this person a hug. But I do want to get to the point where the mention of his or her name doesn't make my eye twitch. And that is possible. And that's where we just, and how I can do forgiveness, especially when people have done something that is seemingly unforgivable. It's not always quick with me. I'm just not wired to naturally be like, oh, that's okay. But if I can't forgive, and sometimes I can, I've gotten better over the years at things. Sometimes I can, but if I can't, then my prayer is, God, I am willing to be willing to forgive. Like I'm not even willing yet, but I know what needs to happen. So God, I am willing to be willing to forgive. That always, without fail, always starts something rolling that gets me to a healing place.
Mhm.
And it could take a day, it could take a year, but the prayer for me is I am willing to be willing to forgive, and that will eventually get me there. So if we're talking about, how do I hold on to love for a person that I find very difficult to love? Well, that sounds like forgiveness work, and that's the thing we can do.
Another thing that I get, I have an app on my phone that on a daily basis, I'll get 3 or 4 just motivational quotes. And because, you're working, you're focused, something wrong happens, and, you lose that charge that you got on Sunday. It's Monday, Manic Monday, and I'll get a notification on my phone. I'm like, what's that? Oh, yeah. And it gives me a moment to stop and just read what it says and meditate, even if I've just taken a few seconds to just stop and reset at that very moment. So that's one of the ways that I personally, sometimes Sunday comes and goes, and boom, Monday hits, and it's Monday. And so, I get these daily motivational quotes on my phone. So I think that's a simple way. Not too in depth, but
I saw my trainer today for the first time in 2 months. Now, I see people on rollerblades and bikes and walking and running and walking their dogs. I see people exercising every day. I have not joined any of them. I've done none of that. I pay a person, and because I'm paying a person who's waiting on me, I show up to the gym. Otherwise, that's what gets me to do it. So I've been in 2 months, and I have gained weight, and I'm so stiff and rah. So today, they started seeing people by appointment again. The gym is not open to the public, but the trainers are seeing people by appointment because that's how they can keep the distancing. And the sanitizer's flowing and mask and whatnot. And they sanitize all the equipment right in front of you. It's actually quite lovely. It's extra attention. But I felt so good all day. I've also felt tired, and I'm already getting sore. But I felt, because boredom, depression, anger, hatred, all of those things, it's energy. And once you find a way to do something with energy, to release it, then you feel better. I just went to the gym this morning, had a 45-minute workout, a lot of stretching, and I have felt better today than I have felt in well over a month. Tomorrow I may feel worse than I felt in well over a month. But it's gonna be a reminder about how good I felt today, and it's gonna be wonderful. So there's also that. I had a therapist one time tell me that in addition to medication, and that when you're suffering, talk it out and walk it out. And so talking out is therapy, talking with friends, prayer, and then do movement. It can be swimming, it can be Tai Chi, it can be walking, but talk it out and walk it out. So if we're hung up on some anger or some frustration or some, whatever, if it's not raining, just walk around the block. It doesn't be training for the Olympics, but release the energy. All right. Good.
Also, Robert, those feelings that you were talking about, anger and frustration, I feel like in a time like this of not keeping as busy as we usually would be, and we don't have our routines going, we're stuck to really be alone with those thoughts, and those feelings of anger and frustration, those negative feelings can seem like they're exponentiated right now. And so all the more reason.
Tito, you were gonna say something?
I was just going to say, sometimes when I am feeling down about something, or I'm just having a bad day, I learned a long time ago this little exercise called attitude of gratitude. And what I do is just, I go through the emotion, whatever I'm feeling, whatever I'm going through, and then I stop myself and I'm like, okay, it's time to change my thought, change my energy, change my feeling. And I literally start giving thanks for all the little things or all the big things in my life. It could be something as simple as a beautiful sky, or a tree, or a plant, or the clothes that I'm wearing, or the job that I have.
Because they fit. I say with my clothes because they fit.
That you're grateful for will eventually start to change the way you feel inside, and you start feeling a lot better.
Yes, where attention goes, energy flows.
Energy flows, exactly.
Exactly.
Well, that's attitude of gratitude.
Love it. We spent a lot of time on that one. That was a good one. I guess that needed to come up. Robert, why don't you give us another one?
Okay, so this is, I always have to have a preference for my question when I see one. Just my nature. Uh, we have been around Course of Miracle for quite some time. And I remember that back in a place where I used to live, A Course in Miracles was almost like heresy. It's like, how dare you teach Course in Miracles? How dare you let that in your church? Course in Miracle is not Christian. It's not spiritual. It's not. So the question that pops up is,
Pin in it. That was Robert's church, and I was the Course in Miracles teacher. But anyway, go ahead.
see, I wasn't going to zoom in like that. However, it was a different time, different place. But it's still as recent as maybe within the last 2 years, there have been clergy who've contacted us saying, "How do you get away with teaching Course in Miracle at your church?" And so it's like, what is this great mystery around Course in Miracles? And the question specifically is what is a Course in Miracles? That's the question. But I've just been kind of baffled by people who have this, I don't know, I don't want to call it odd, unique, whatever, unknown experience with Course in Miracles in the form of heresy, if you will. So that's the question. What is Course in Miracles?
This is what I found about almost everything, that if you're committed to a path and you don't know about other paths scare you. If you are committed to a path, but are also familiar with other paths, you see how similar those paths are. And so they don't scare you. They sort of excite you. It's like, oh, wow, that truth you're teaching is a truth I already knew, but I heard it from this other place. And so it's sort of exciting. So it seems like just like if you know a gay person and you're not gay, then gayness isn't a weird thing for you because you know a gay person and they're wonderful. So if you know a thing and it's just not scary to you because you know it. I think a lot of people don't know it, and so they're scared about it. A Course in Miracles teaches love and forgiveness. It's trying to get us to get over our fears, and you replace fears with love. And if you can't get to love, you can get to love by forgiveness. And so, I mean, it's just that. It's love. Everything is love, or it's fear and judgment. And fear and judgment is BS. And so get back to the truth, which is love. It's just love, love, love. How could you have a problem with it? Now, there's an origin story about A Course in Miracles, about how it came, and it sort of comes in a mystical way. And a psychiatrist and her buddy, they one of them gets this inner dictation, and they write it down. They talk about it, and so the origin seems spooky and mystical if you don't know anything about it. But what the Course is love, and so if you just know what it is. The language is cumbersome for me, but otherwise the principles are sound and universal. So I think that people have a big problem with it. Either just are kind of hung up on the origin story, or they just don't know anything about it to begin with. So that's what I'm guessing. Now, what is A Course in Miracles specifically? What's it about? We actually have a Course in Miracles teacher on the panel, Reverend Margarita. So I think maybe she should enlighten us about it.
All right. So just like you said, Darrell, it's all that, and I think the people get hung up on the origin of where it comes from. But whether you believe it or not, it's up to you. But the truth is there, and it's really systematic learning to dismantle fear. And what it comprises of is text that has 31 chapters, and then it has another workbook, which is 365 lessons, and they're intended to be done one per day for a full year and in a systematic order. So it's called a course because if you actually follow it, you're learning to dismantle fear. And the way it's done one lesson per day. You are not supposed to do 2 lessons a day, even if you want to be an overachiever student. And there are exercises that you just are told to follow. And it's simple. Now, the course says that actually is like 2 sentences, and then it repeats that in all those pages. It's really about love is the only thing that exists. Everything else is an illusion. And we're separate from God, and that's why we feel fear. But once we come to join God in love, that's all there is. So it's about the omnipresence of God. So because we have been taught different things from different religions and different traditions, it's a different way of seeing it. So it does challenge some of the views that we might have already embedded in our minds of how things work. So it's just a great way to learn how to dismantle fear.
It even challenges our notion of what a miracle is, because it defines a miracle as a change of perception from fear to love.
Yep.
And so the miracle is basically going to peace instead of to pieces. That's the miracle. And it's not the magic, it's not the, I'm walking on water or walking through walls or whatever, or living to be 116. It's that I'm not afraid. I have peace, and I have peace because I know I'm one with God. A course says that, in the creation myth, Adam falls asleep, but then the story never says that Adam wakes up. And then after that is when crazy things start happening, like snakes start talking and there's a magic tree and it gets a little weird. And which, of course, miracles interprets as when we are living the dream, when we are living an illusion, things seem crazy and scary, and we need a spiritual path to help us wake up to the truth that we're one with God and really all is well. And so the miracle is when we do that. Buddhism calls that enlightenment. Evangelical Christianity calls that being saved. So it's a different, it's just a different vocabulary, one more path to help us wake up and be who we really are.
Mm-hmm.
And if it scares you, then it's for you, because it's trying to offer the cure for fear. So
exactly.
Exactly. So the thing that troubles you could be the thing that cures you.
Yeah.
All right, Sam, we have time for at least one more, maybe two. So why don't you give us one?
Okay. Do you have to worship Jesus to follow Jesus? And then I would also, can you just think Jesus is way cool without following or worshiping him? He's cool.
Groovy Jesus.
Sure, what do I care? Well, here's the thing. Your experience is your experience. I mean, so like, if Jesus is sort of marginally impressive to you, that's your truth. It just is. Or if Jesus is like this heroic figure and you want to sort of follow in his footsteps and be like him, well, then that's your truth. Or if you think that he's like, Hercules, son of Zeus and a mortal woman, then, well, now you've left me a little bit in the dust, but you're entitled to that. And so your truth is your truth. Your experience is your experience. So it just has to be okay, because it is what it is. Can you follow Jesus without worship? Of course you can.
It's yeah. Can you follow him without worshiping?
All of his first followers did. Jesus, the deification of Jesus didn't live to know about. It was way after him. And so yes, of course. And the first 5 schools of Christian thought, there were debates about what is his nature, why are we so attracted to him? And some came with some very cosmic, sort of acid trippy answers, and others just thought, well, he just gets it, and we want to get it, so let's learn from him and try to be like him. The two kind of main schools of people who followed the Jesus way in the beginning, one were Jesus movements, and those are people who loved the human Jesus. They loved what he had to say. They were inspired by his preaching. They were inspired by his courage and compassion. They wanted to be like him. They wanted to learn about him so they could be like him. The other schools were Christ cults, where they thought that there was this spiritual reality, which is the Christ, and that's what it was all about. That Jesus symbolized that, but this cosmic Christ was the power that Jesus represented, but it was all about that. And you see the difference of thinking even in the New Testament. John presents sort of a Christ cult. In the beginning, there is this logos, there's this idea, there is this principle. Whereas Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they got a guy walking around in sandals, and they're following him, and they get in some real trouble about it. So it's both schools of thought have been around since within 100 years of Jesus. I think Jesus thought of himself as a Jewish person being faithful, doing his thing. And so if the people who lived within 100 years of him, maybe within 100 yards of him, had a variety of opinions, of course, we're going to have a variety of opinions. So, so you tell me who Jesus is to you, and my response is congratulations. Sounds good to me. Tito, give us another one.
So this is actually a question. Can you give us an example of how a trans person would see a reflection of themselves in the Bible?
Okay. I actually redacted that. I remember that question. It said, gay people see themselves, lesbians see themselves. There's some examples. But what are examples of trans people? I don't know that it's as clear. Like when the Roman centurion says, "Will you heal my my pais, my servant?" and the word he uses means lover, really. And so when the Roman centurion comes to Jesus and say, my lover is sick, my male lover, and yes, he was a slave, but apparently they had grown, there was such a thing as body slaves in the Roman Empire, and slaves that took care of your body, and sometimes that included sexuality stuff, and so they had gotten close apparently. So he says, "Come and heal my lover, my chamber servant." And Jesus does, and praises the man's faith. And so, okay, there you go. That's and then in the book of Judges, there is a warrior. He comes back. He says if he wins his battle, he'll kill whatever comes out of his house. He comes home. What comes out of his house is his daughter, Jephthah's daughter. And so he's like, I made a promise to God. Got to kill you, honey. Sorry. I think that is a promise that could have been renegotiated. I think he could have said, you know what? I didn't think that through, God. Sorry. I'm going to have to renege on this one. But he doesn't. And his daughter says, okay, I understand. So not saying she was bright, but she said, I get it. But let me go mourn my virginity. And so she takes her girlfriends to the hills, and they spend some quality time together before she comes back and allows her father to sacrifice her. Well, what is this all-girl party in the mountains? You know what I mean? So I think Jephthah's daughter, she's like, if I've got just days left to live, I want it to be quality days. And this is what quality would look like to me, spending time with all other women. Hello. Right? So yeah, we see queer folk all over the place in the Bible, or I do. We see our people. I don't know that trans experience is that obvious, but maybe it's because I am not full on trans. I have got a complicated relationship with gender. I probably fit under the big trans umbrella somewhere as being gender nonconforming in lots of ways, but I don't identify as transgender. I don't think that I'm 100% one thing that got 100% mislabeled from the beginning. So maybe if I were, I'd see a lot more of it, because that's why I see the gay people. I see my people. But what I can see right off the bat is gender nonconformity. I see gender binaries being challenged. I see presumably male Jesus weeping as he looks at Jerusalem. And those of us who've been to Jerusalem know you can look at it and cry. I mean, it's beautiful, and you get some feels. But looking at Jerusalem and crying, he says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who stoned the prophets. He says, how I would have loved to gather me to me like a hen gathers her chicks. He's got a zillion masculine images to choose from, and Jesus identifies with a mother hen. Jerusalem, how I would have gathered you to my breast, like a mother hen gathers her chicks under her wings. We do see those kinds of hints a lot. We see with the playing of things, we see El Shaddai is one of the names for God. It means God of the mountains, except mountains is also a euphemism for breast. And so a lot of scholars really think it is best translated as Almighty Breasted One, except the English translators usually translate it as God Almighty. So it's probably a goddess image, but it winds up being translated as a God image. And so there's this fluidity of how we even deal with El Shaddai. Spirit, God is spirit, Jesus tells us. And Jesus uses sort of an equivalent of they, them pronoun with spirit. He uses non-gendered pronoun because he says the word pneuma, or the Greek version. Jesus spoke Aramaic, but we get that in Greek. And the Greek word pneuma is gender neutral, it's it. And so the spirit is it. But the Hebrew word for spirit is ruach, and that is feminine. And so sometimes, depending on the language, spirit is it, and sometimes spirit is she. And then we see in the creation myth, God creates man and woman. God creates them in God's image. And so they're both perfectly divine. And so if you identify as one or the other, who cares? Because it's all divine. And then the Apostle Paul even sort of reiterates that when he says, in Christ, there is neither male nor female. And so we see non-binary, we also see men and women doing things that in their culture would have been the role of the other. You see sometimes you'll see a man carrying water. Well, that's women's work in that culture. And so there are lots of clues where I think if I were gender nonconforming, gender queer, transgender, gender non-binary person, I would say, hey, I see me in that, or at least I hear someone speaking to me as the person I am in that. And I think those clues are pretty abundant in Scripture.
Now, would you consider a eunuch under that umbrella of trans, or is that different because they've been castrated?
Well, here's the thing.
I thought the same thing, Tito.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about that. Slaves were castrated. Not all of them, because some of them were used for breeding, and some were used for battle, and so you wanted them to feel whole or whatever. Others, though, were used to serve women, and you didn't want some slave knocking up your daughter or your wife or whatever, and so they'd be castrated. And then once they were castrated, because their genitalia had been changed, even though that was against their will. I mean, it was abuse. But still, once they had been physically altered, they were different. And different people are often hypersexualized. And so eunuchs were functionally bisexual because they were sexualized by the oppressors. They were sexually used in a lot of ways. And so they were functionally bisexual. They were treated, they were sort of neutered and treated as if they were non-gendered so they could guard the important women. And so they were sexualized and they were altered, and their gender they didn't get to decide. It was assigned to them. And then they were expected to live into that, whether or not there was their truth. And so there are a lot of similarities with eunuchs. Weren't people who said, this is who I've discovered myself to be and how I want to be known. And yet they had gender assigned to them. They were treated in certain ways. They were expected to live into certain roles. And that's the way we treat gender still. And when people try to break out of that and say, well, no, actually, this is who I am, there's a lot of social resistance. And so eunuchs, it's not an exact parallel, but it brings up the discussion. There are some similarities,
Right.
I think.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call us right there. This has been a very rich discussion this evening. And I think this could be a part two on some levels for next Monday, just to kind of pick up where we left off with some questions. But as each of our guests this evening, or panelists this evening, begin to think of your closing thought, let me say a thank you to everyone who has joined us for this evening. Very special thank you for taking the time to be with us. Again, if you are looking for things to do during the day, please just join us for noonday prayer at noon, Monday through Saturday. Of course, there is Share in the Chair this coming Wednesday at 6 p.m. with the Reverend Elder Dr. Mona West. And of course, as always, Sunday at 10:30 a.m., we live stream our services right here from the Sunshine Cathedral in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and invite everyone to join us. So with that said, let me go for our concluding last thoughts to our panel. And Margarita, we're going to start with you.
All right. Well, I just want to say thank you to everybody, and just remember to praise the light and don't curse the darkness.
Yes.
All righty. Sarah. I'm Sarah. Oh, where's Sarah? Let's try Sam. There's an S in there. Sam.
All right.
The first thing.
Yeah, the first symptom here.
I'm just really glad that you guys talked about Course in Miracles, because it's something that really resonates with me. And one thing I've really learned through there that helps me sort of in my day-to-day is that every act that we or someone else does is either an act of love or a call for love. It's never an attack. It's always a feeling a lack of love. And so like calling for more, or an act of love where you're giving. So.
And I'm going to put a plug there, since Sam mentioned that about the Course of Miracles. They do that on Zoom. So if everyone wants to get more information about that, just drop me an email at Robert Sunshine Cathedral, and I'll get it over to Margarita for you so she can get more information to you about that. So, Tara.
All right. So something that stuck with me was what Jarrell said in response to Tito's question. And I actually wrote it down because I wanted to remember it with the cocktails and everything. He said, you can pray, or you can ask, and you can say, I am willing to be willing to forgive. And I thought that was interesting because you can change the verb in that sentence, forgive, to anything. I am willing to be happy, to be positive, to bless others, and so I really like that thought.
Nice.
All righty, Tito.
The other thing I can think of, what I said earlier, the attitude of gratitude. If you're ever feeling down and you just need to get out of, something where you're not feeling the energy, or you're not feeling well, or you're not happy, just start thinking of the things that you can be grateful. You can start as small as you want and just work your way from there. And eventually, once you start doing it, you'll start feeling a lot better.
Cool. All righty. The other two, Dennis.
I could be called worse, trust me.
Well, Sarah's the other Sam.
Yeah, not my night tonight. I'm bad on names.
I'm just thankful for the connection. This church is such a special group of people, and the love that we feel for each other. For those of you that are watching, we do love you. We miss you. We miss seeing you on Sundays. And it's not the same, I happen to work on Sundays helping to make sure that the broadcast happens. Both of us do. Sam and Tara are there as well. Obviously, Robert and Darrell are there, and Margarita's there with us in spirit. But it's not the same with having everybody in the room, but know that we love you, and that love translates through this. It really, really, really does. And that connection is here. And if you need anything, reach out to us, and we're here to support you.
And I will just say, just stand by for a very special announcement real soon about being back together from our senior minister in the next week or so. But as we are going to say, we are Sunshine Cathedral. We strive to be America's queer church for all. And with that said, our senior minister is going to give us our parting word for this evening.
I just love that we talk about things. I think so, like, even if you disagree with what we come up with, or if you think, well, wow, this is obvious thing and nobody said that, or whatever, I don't even care what comes out of the conversation. That we have it is what I think makes us unique. that nothing's off the table. We'll think about it. We'll talk about it. We'll see where it goes. And I think that is our real gift to the church and to the world, is that we're not afraid to talk about it, whatever it is: sex, sexuality, gender, God, Jesus, channeling. I mean, whatever. We'll just talk about it. And I just think that's our real gift. And I'm so proud to be part of a group and part of a church that offers that gift to the world. And so my blessing for everyone tonight is from the Torah. You hear me offer it often on Sundays. May God bless us and keep us. May God's face shine upon us and be gracious to us. May God look upon us kindly and grant us peace. Amen.
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 And a toast to
Amen.
you for joining us tonight. Thank you so much. Glasses up
you.
one last time. Have a good evening, everyone, and thank you for being with us here live. All righty. Good night. Take
Good
care.
night.
Bye.
Bye.